Yeah. So this is Yanone, everyone. Yanone. That's how you pronounce it. He has been sort of, Yanone. So he studied at the Bauhaus University, also the KABK, worked at Font Shop. He's a type designer and a self-taught software engineer. I believe you're Coffeesats or whatever. Is that your font?
Coffeesats.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
I downloaded that when I was in high school, maybe.
Yeah, that was my first typeface. That's how it all started for me.
Thank you.
Because it was free, I believe it caught on quickly when the internet was still quite a different place in 2004.
Yeah.
And it kept the interest going. Also, I interned at Font Shop. I didn't work there. I want to
Okay. Sure.
point out the difference.
Very good. Thank you. And you've lived in Amman, Jordan for quite a while too?
Yeah, I got married there 6.5 years ago. I returned to Jordan for like, I don't know, the third or fourth time or so since my initial internship in Amman. Made friends and I returned to design F15 Arabic, which I've been proposed to design, which was my secret. Well, okay, it says that in the description about me here. My secret wish to design, and I never dared to ask. And and quickly met my wife and we married. Now we live in Germany near my parents. And so the question was, yes, I lived in Jordan for like 5 years or so with her together.
Okay. And now you're virtually here and ready to give your presentation. And I think we should probably get started. So everyone, here is Yanone and Type.World.
Hello, Type.World. Hello, ATypI. Thanks for hosting us here on ATypI Tech Talks. So a few years ago, I was faced with a custom type job for a branding agency, and I thought it would be cool to have a tiny little app that could pull font updates from the internet onto the designers' computers in the agency. As for security reasons, it's not possible to push fonts or any other files onto a computer from the outside. An app needs to be installed on each computer that pulls fonts from the inside. I thought that keeping on emailing the designers the font updates and relying on their diligence to actually install the updates every single time constitutes a really unprofessional work experience. Then I looked around and found that no other tool exists in an open forum to get the job done. So I thought it would be a good idea to create one. I quickly realized that I was onto a pretty powerful idea and sat down to create it. That was back in 2017, I think. I wanted it to become both open source and not non-for-profit because I wanted to earn the trust of the independent type publishing world by not draining anyone of even more of their hard-earned revenue. Well, it turned out that publishers trust this project more being for-profit, as they require ongoing technical support once they choose to implement Type.World for their users. So that's the one really big turn that the project took in the last year. I had to realize that a donation-based project isn't going to be financially stable long-term, and followed the advice of some of you and turned it into a professional and commercial project instead. I'll go into the implications later. That decision easily exploded the work by around half a year, and that's the main reason why I'm late with the publication of the initial stable release of the 1.0 version. We're inching ever closer to 1.0, but we're not there yet. I'm working my ass off and have recently reached or crossed my mental and physical health boundaries several times, so I need to take it step by step and hope for your understanding. This will be the final presentation before 1.0 and the most thorough one to date. I will present you the project in more or less its final form before 1.0. I do have lots of feature plans for the future, but we have to start somewhere. Avid followers might not discover too many changes, but I'm hoping to provide a better understanding of the project to a larger audience than ever before today. Now let's jump in, shall we? The app needs to be downloaded and installed once from the website. By the way, the website will see significant changes before the publication. It will look exactly like you would expect from an end user facing website. Here's the download section, and I'm downloading the app for Mac. I'm going to speed up the whole process in the video here a bit. So this is how it looks. There's not much to see yet because we still need to add font subscriptions. But what we can do already is change the language to English and then restart the app so that we can see the presentation in English. Now we need to add fonts. The normal behavior would be, the normal process would be to click on a button of a font publisher's website after you've purchased their fonts. I'm going to simulate that. I have a development server here and a demo publisher, and I prepared a page that mimics a download page. So imagine you just purchased a font and you see a button that looks something like that. You click on it and the Type.World app comes open. Now in this case, we require the publisher requires a user account to be linked in the app, a Type.World user account, for security reasons. I will go into the security protocol a bit later. So what we need to do first is to log into a user account or create one, but I already have one, so I'm just going to log in here. Okay, that worked. So now you can see I have my user account email address here. I'm a pro user. I'll get into that in a second. And currently the app is not receiving live notifications. I'll get to that later because there is nothing to listen to yet. So I'll repeat the process. App comes open, subscription is loading, the live notification icon switched to notify that it is receiving live notifications, and there's our first font subscription. You need to agree to terms of service from the publisher, and now you can download and install your fonts. For example, all of these fonts in one go by just clicking the Install All button here. And now they're all installed in version 1.3 of the font. Currently only that one version is available here. You can click on the font and see images or all kinds of metadata, all kinds of information about the font. This is not the complete set of information that's available. There is more, but it's not defined for this typeface. I'll quickly show you the back end. So this user account has these fonts defined. 5 seats are allowed for the Yanone Coffeesats, although that's in this case that's nonsense because it's an open source font, but for demonstration purposes I've limited this to 5. The interface that you're seeing here would not be visible to an end user. This is a backend that I've programmed for my demo publisher, and I've added 2 fonts with only 1 seat license, one of which is a trial font and available for only 1 minute to use, which in reality again is nonsense, but for demonstration purposes this is how it'll work. If you're a pro user, indicated by this badge here, you can synchronize the contents of your user account to another computer. I have prepared a virtual machine here that is basically mimicking another Mac computer, a separate computer. And now if I log into the same user account in the other computer, the same content is now available in the second computer. Now, for demonstration purposes, we've looked at the amount of seats that were allowed for this user. Coffeesats had 5 seats available, so I can just install all of them. But the other two had only 1 seat allowed. This is mimicking like a license limitation, a font license limitation. So if I go over here and on the app on my first computer, I install this typeface Runya, it will pass, it's installed. But if I go to the second computer and install the same typeface, it should fail with this message, seat allowance reached. Either uninstall this font on another computer or increase the seat allowance with the publisher. Now there's a button here, and which will lead you, or which, if the publisher has defined that, it leads you directly back into the online shop where you first bought the font to upgrade your license. Also, any changes that you make to a user account at one app will reflect in all the other synchronized apps, all the other connected apps. So I'm going to add a second font subscription here from the same publisher, but containing only free fonts. It will load in the app, and it shows here. Now, this is the same typeface, but for demonstration purposes, this is a different subscription. And now if I switch over to my virtual machine, the new subscription is already there. It has synchronized in the meantime in the background before I could even switch to it. A quick one about font versions. So you can see that of Runya I have version 1.1 installed, also seen here on the sidebar by this little badge. And I can instead choose to revert to an older version by clicking on installing the 1.0 version. And it indicates now with an orange badge that an older version is installed, and also over here you can see that at least one font is not up to date. And the same visual representation will appear when the font subscription gets updated by the publisher to show a new font version. There will be a visual indicator in the app and a notification coming in here on the sidebar on the side of your operating system, indicating you that there's a new font version available to install. And then you can actually click here and click on update all fonts, and it will update all the fonts of this subscription to its latest version. The app supports expiring fonts, so you can offer your trial fonts to users, indicated here by the trash icon with the clock. In this case, as we've seen earlier, the expiry is set to 1 minute. So I can install the font here. And now it's counting down from now 1 to 0. In the meantime, you can't quit the app. So whenever expiring fonts are active, app needs to stay open. Otherwise, for all other fonts, you can close it. And then a minute later, again, I'm speeding up the video here. A minute later, the font uninstalls on its own. And there we go. Now it's gone. And again, there should be an operating system notification coming in here. I haven't added that yet. There's a few notifications still missing. You can invite other users to share font subscriptions that you yourself are subscribed to. I often receive the question or concern whether the app observes the legal aspect of sharing invitations, of sharing fonts basically. And it does not. You can invite anyone to share a font subscription. because I thought that that's technically or actually legally the same as inviting or as sharing funds by email. There's no technical limitation to sharing funds. So the issue of sharing funds with other people remains a purely legal one between you as the licensee and the foundry. But because normally funds have at least like 5 or so seats per license, that means that there must be a technical way for you to share funds with your, let's say, colleagues in your own office. And they might not run on the same user account, the same Type.World user account as you. So there needs to be a way to share funds and to invite them. And we're going to have a look at that now. So my buddy in the office, he's running on a Windows computer and he's running the Type.World app for Windows. He's logged into his user account and he's also a pro user. So he's receiving notifications, but he's running a slightly older version of the app, so it looks a bit different here. And I want to share this font subscription with him. And as you can see, there is now a hint for a notification for a pending invitation. And he needs to accept that invitation to access the subscription. If he wasn't a pro user and he wasn't subscribed to live notifications, then he would have seen that email that just came in, which here came in on my Mac email app, but he would have received it otherwise to his email account, notifying him of the subscription invitation when he's not subscribed to live notifications. Now, remember that these two typefaces here are only entitled to 1 seat per subscription, right? So if I go back to my to the app on my computer and I install this font Runia once, and then my buddy on his Windows computer, he wants to do the same, he'll receive an error message saying that the seats are exhausted for this license, and that's because the server of the publisher counts the amount of installations of a font. So take this as a reminder that just because font subscriptions are shared or can be shared is not an indicator of whether the invitees, the recipients of the invitation, can actually install the fonts, because the font publisher keeps control over that. Now is actually a good moment to talk about the live notifications. They are the major reason why I had to turn Type.World into a commercial project despite still being open source. And that's because live notifications require messaging servers that you as a user never encounter directly, but you do encounter the notifications that come into the app. And there are servers that I need to scale up and down according to the user base of the project, of the app, and they cost me real money. And they are not very expensive for 1 user or for 100 users or for 1,000, but they will be very expensive for millions of users. And I had to find a way to put the project into a safe space, into a safe setup by making the decision to charge end users for a pro user account of €1 per month for the end users. And with that pro user account, they will be able to invite other users, as we've seen, and they will be able to synchronize their user account to a second computer of their own. and receive notifications of subscription invitations live. Otherwise, by email for free, but for live notifications, that requires a pro user account. Which brings us directly to me explaining to you how the whole system is designed and set up. For that, I want to introduce you to the developer information at Type.World/developer. That's an extensive document that contains everything you need to know to implement an API endpoint for your users. In particular, I want to show you this infographic here that I'm going to open a bit bigger for you now. There you go. This is the entire Type.World, if you will, the entire setup of my project. The most basic setup involves only a Type.World app installed on a computer and the font publisher. In this case, this here indicates a server run by the font publisher that hosts the website and the API endpoint that serves the data to the Type.World app. So when the user clicks on the Install in Type.World app button on the publisher's website, the app opens, loads the subscription, then the app asks for fonts. Font publisher serves back the fonts back into the app. Once you enter a user account, once you link the app with a user account, it synchronizes the data through this channel here with the central Type.World cloud servers. This is the basic and free usage of the system. Otherwise, we've seen the font publisher notifying the app of a subscription update as a live notification, and the font publisher does that through the central server here and then down here, which is also for the publisher a paid service. I'll get into that in a bit. We've seen the user synchronize his user account to a second computer of their own user account, which requires a professional user account. And we've seen the first user invite his buddy on Windows, which is a second user account, to share a font subscription, which could be either for free when the invitation is only received by email, or also requires a second pro user account if the second user wants to receive these notifications live. Up here we see the Type.World cloud, which is a bunch of different servers that run, for example, the Type.World website and the Type.World API. I'll get to that in a second. And the messaging servers that handle the live notifications. All software in this whole project is open source. The app itself is open source code. The API endpoint that serves the data to the app is based on an open source protocol, and the cloud servers either are or will be open source. At the moment, the central server that hosts the user accounts basically is not yet open source, but I will open source it after I went over the code to make sure that no confidential information reaches places it's not supposed to go to. So let's talk about money then. As I've mentioned previously, the basic usage of the system is free for both users as well as publishers. So let's look at the details. Users first. Free for the user is the usage of the app. That's kind of obvious, but I'm mentioning it anyway. As well as opening a Type.World user account, which enables the users to back up their subscriptions into the user account and to access them easily after reinstallation of a computer. As well as receive invitations, but notifications only by email. The paid services include synchronizing user accounts to several computers that are linked to one user account, as well as inviting other users to share font subscriptions, as well as receiving invitations to subscriptions, but with live notifications. when the app is open. For publishers, it's free to offer fonts through Type.World. Again, it sounds obvious, but when, for example, a free font subscription is offered to users for free, then none of the Type.World cloud servers are involved. As I've showed you earlier, the connections are just between the app and the publisher. And so I don't have any strain on my servers and don't need to charge anything. This is a completely decentralized setup where I'm not involved. Then paid for publishers are basically the cloud services, which are sending live subscription update notifications through our messaging servers. And as an added benefit, it's kind of in the same process. As an added benefit, you get a live validation of data before it reaches the end user, because the central server will look at the data and validate it before it processes the subscription update notification. The price for the Pro user account is 12 euros per year. It's billed yearly, so that's €1 a month. And the price for publishers is usage-based, and we'll have a look at that just now. So as far as money goes, you have to view Type.World as a cloud technology provider. The software itself is free. Paid services are basically for consuming resources of the cloud technology that I'm providing. That can't be part of the basic free package because they cost actual money. Basically, there's one scenario that could potentially cost me a lot of money and therefore threaten the project financially, which are free font sites. And I'm talking not about Google Fonts here, for example, but about the various really crappy free font websites out there that offer all those really, really crappy free fonts, which could potentially have millions and millions of users. I don't know. But imagine that they started to offer their fonts through the Type.World app and millions of users would start using it, and all connecting to my messaging server. I mentioned earlier that that's where the problem lies for me. Neither the free font service would pay for that, nor would the users. So basically, I had to decide to charge end users for the live notifications to prevent millions of free font users from consuming my resources. In the current setup, all scenarios that do consume resources are covered financially. Either the publisher chooses to send live notifications and pay for the messaging server, or the end user does. And therefore, we have a stable system. Let's look at the price structure for the publishers then. In the meantime, I have updated the developer page here on the Type.World website with this navigation bar here on top that consolidates all important links to developer resources in one place. And over here, you find the price calculator. So the billing is divided into 3 categories. The first 2 are related to sending subscription update notifications, and the content change in the subscription is billed separately. The first category charges subscription updates that show added fonts in them. Either the subscription has appeared completely new. This is equal to a font publisher having a new customer and selling fonts to them for the first time, or added fonts, which means an existing customer has purchased additional fonts. The second category charges for added font versions. So when a publisher needs to send out an enormous amount of font version updates, then those resources consumed in my cloud will be covered as well. And the third category covers active users per month. So these are users of a foundry, of a publisher that have their app open, their Type.World app open at least once a month. Let's fill in a sample calculation. There are these text fields here, and this one is asking for average number of normal sales per month. So let's say you have 1,000 sales per month. Update. That would cost you 210 euros a month. For calculating font version updates, we see two text fields, and the resulting number for this sample calculation is a combination of the two, a multiplication of the two actually. So imagine that you're sending out on average 10 font updates per month, and on average 10% of your 1,000 users are reached by those updates. So let's put 100 here and update the calculation. So you would pay €2.10 per month for this category. And active users, worst case scenario, we're also putting the 1,000 here, which would cost you 17 euros a month. So in total, you would end up paying 229 euros here per month. And there's a currency converter, which is just for your information. So that's 270 US dollars. That's just for your information. The bills will be sent in euros regardless, because I am based in Europe. The prices are charged in tiers or tiers. I have no idea actually how to pronounce that. So the first 100 will cost, of this particular category, first 100 60 cents, then the following 130 cents a piece, and then all the future ones 15 cents and then 10 cents. And the two other prices work in the same way, except that the unit prices here are different. Also, all values that you enter into the sample calculation here are added to the URL, so you can actually copy and paste the URL and send the complete sample calculation to a colleague for their information. Let's enter a second sample calculation. A really small foundry has only 100 sales per month. And so on average, they're also just reaching 10 users per month with the font updates, and also just 100 users for monthly active users. So that would cost 66 euros or 79 US dollars. By the way, the Pro Publisher plan has a trial period, a free trial period of 6 months or 180 days to be precise. And you need to use this period to onboard all of the existing customers of yours or users to the Type.World system. So you have to create basically one subscription per user if each user account actually shows different fonts, which would be the norm for retail publishers, because you would pay for subscription updates, right, as we've just discussed. So make sure to onboard all of your existing users and therefore their font subscriptions to Type.World within your free trial period. Let's take a quick look at the remaining developer resources. We've seen the prices. The most important one is here in the beginning. This is the main developer documentation that you need to read thoroughly to be able to implement an API endpoint for the app. I just quickly want to point out one resource that's not linked anywhere else, which is here under serving JSON responses. The last one here, a reference implementation. This leads to a GitHub repository that contains a sample reference implementation as a Flask server. I'm going to quickly open it. And here under app.py, you will find a reference implementation that is a dummy that won't work out of the box, but it explains step by step with lots of comments what you need to do step by step to implement an API endpoint. Because it's not connected to your database and your user structure, you will find lots of variables with 2 underscores, such as these. And those indicate that you need to replace this with your own logic and your own data structure. I apologize that I can't go into detail any further right now because I'm slowly running out of time, and also because I've covered the web server part, how all the different servers play together in my last presentation for Type Tech Meetup. So I'm gonna skip over that now. Next up here is the definition of the Type.World JSON protocol, which is the main language or the main protocol definition that is used to communicate between your API endpoint and the app. Again, at the moment, it's a link to GitHub, but in the near future, I'm planning to implement or to incorporate that documentation right here on this page. So I already put the link here for your reference. This documentation covers the JSON protocol in detail. You see the object structure, and it contains both Python programming examples as well as its output. The module or the protocol itself is implemented in Python right here on this GitHub repository here, Type.World/Type.World. But you are more than welcome to implement your own API endpoint in the language of your choice, be it PHP or Ruby or whatever the kids are using nowadays. What you need to know is that this is the JSON data that gets exchanged, and it's all defined here in this document, and there's actual data examples, JSON data examples everywhere. Over here, under My Endpoints, you need to register your own API endpoint with the system, with its complete URL, starting with the Type.World custom handler and the JSON protocol and HTTPS and so on and so forth. I've already done that for my 2 API endpoints that I'm using, the title of which is already extracted from the data that comes from your API endpoint. If you click here on the Edit button, you will find the API key that you need to use to interact with the central Type.World server for various API calls that I will explain to you next. Here you can register Type.World user accounts for pro user accounts. You can mimic them to be pro user accounts if you want to test that functionality without having to pay. Up to 10 accounts can be added per API endpoint. And finally, you will find the API log. These are the logs to the API calls that you make to the central server, for example, to verify whether a user is a legitimate Type.World user account or to update subscriptions. I'll get to that right away. You need those to debug your work. Here you see the incoming parameters that you sent and their responses. Now let's look at the API. 4 commands are exposed to the public. The verify credentials used to verify whether a user is actually real and actually holds the subscription that he claims he does. This is a security feature. Inviting users to subscriptions, both used by the app itself, but it could also be used by an API endpoint. This is the inverse command, revoke a subscription invitation. And here's probably the most important one, the update subscription command. This is used to notify users of changes in a subscription through the messaging server, and this is the paywalled command that you can only subscribe to if you're a pro publisher. That you can only use when you're a pro publisher. There's a Python programming example down here, and we're going to put that to use right now. I have already prepared that in a document here, and you remember the Type.World app, our Type.World app with our subscription. One font is installed, Runya, And we're going to update that subscription now by executing this Python code. As soon as I hit enter on this command, the subscription here should show its, its spinning wheel and update its content. And there you go. Now nothing actually changed because we didn't change any content of the subscription, but I just wanted to show you how it works. Let's quickly do a real-world example. Remember that Runya is installed in version 1.1. And over here on the back end, I'm quickly going to add another version. Okay, now the changes are published on the server side, but we still need to notify the app of the update. So I'm going to repeat. And now when the app gets notified of the subscription update, it should show a notification, or at least an indicator, that a new font version is available to install. Yay, there we go. And now I can hit update all fonts here. And you can see here it's installing. And now it's updated to 1.2. Except that the operating system notification is still missing. That was supposed to come in up here. I quickly want to show you the API logs to the two calls that we just made. So I'm going back to my endpoints and to my demo publisher endpoint and skipping over a bunch of verified credentials calls that happened after our calls. Here's the last update subscription call that we made. And I want to show you especially that it was billed as a subscription update for an added font version, because that's what we did. Whereas the previous one, update subscription call, before that didn't have any data change, is not billed as anything. This is important for you to observe what's going on. Let's look at the next tab, the validator. There used to be an online validator here that you could use to validate the correct function of your API endpoint, but I had to temporarily remove that online functionality because it messed with the load balancer of the central server. But that's not a real problem because there's the Type.World Python module here that you can use that contains the validator. And I'm quickly going to show you how to use it now. So first you install the Type.World Python module with pip or update it in case you have already installed it. Pasting this here in my terminal. Okay, it's up to date. Output the help file. So you type this command, then the subscription URL, and then one or several of the profiles, which are defined here and here and here. Or you type all to run all of them. And I'm quickly going to do that for the subscription that I have on my demo server that contains only free fonts. Pasting the URL here, and then all, hitting enter. And this is the output. It ran a bunch of tests. There's comments, passed, and so on and so forth. Or not tested. Some tests get skipped because the conditions aren't met. And that should help you to debug your API endpoint or test it for its correct function. And finally, over here we have the billing page where you set up your billing address, your payment method, and subscribe to the professional publisher plan. This is my current invoice. I've been charged with 3 subscription updates with added fonts, 5 with added font versions. These normally happen during the automated tests, so this is not from what we just did just now. 0 active users. This simply isn't implemented yet. I will have to still implement this in the next couple of weeks. The calculation is already done, but it is not happening in an automated way. So my current bill is €2.18. I'm actually paying myself at the moment to see if everything works. And that should be it. There are currently only 2 payment methods implemented for the Pro Publisher plan, or even for the user account, for the Pro user account, which are credit cards and European bank account debits. I can add more in the future. What's important to know for the time being as a publisher is that if you subscribe to the Pro Publisher plan and you're within the 180 days of free trials, that the individual positions aren't going to show up on your preliminary invoice. Everything will be 0. That's because the payment processor Stripe isn't counting anything while still in trial. So you will have to rely on the information available in the developer pages that I showed you just now. I hope I could whet your appetite and show you how the software, how the technology provides a vastly improved user experience for using fonts on the desktop. And I hope that you will participate in the project in the future as a publisher, as a user, maybe as a donator. I have a Patreon page on patreon.com/Type.World if you feel like supporting the development process. Otherwise, please follow Type.World on Twitter for the latest updates and ask me anything. Ask me questions. Drop me an email to hello@type.world and maybe I can answer a few of your questions hereafter in the Q&A. Thanks again to ATypI Tech Talks for hosting me, and looking forward to meeting all of you again in the future in person.
The moderator is also back. Hi, Aaron.
Ooh, hi. That was very impressive. Very impressive. And we have limited time, so I'll jump right into the questions. Let's see. Will the Type.World app add more font manager features like specimen page renders, more detailed lists of features, font bug checking, etc.?
Yes. No. It's a mixed question, so it's also a mixed answer. Font rendering is out of principle not possible until the fonts have actually arrived in the app. So you can't preview fonts. This is a common question. You can't preview fonts based on the font data itself, based on the fonts themselves, because what we're trying to achieve here is, on one hand, to make font installations more usable, but on the other hand, also for foundries, for publishers to be able to observe the licenses better than before. So font downloads will be restricted by the license. So everything that gets downloaded is metadata at first. It's just data describing the font. And that question has also come up in the Q&A. There, the protocol includes preview images. You've seen the images already briefly in the presentation. This is metadata. It's an image that gets provided by the font publisher for you to choose fonts. And also the protocol, I think, either already includes or will include OpenType features. And I want to add also language support calculation. So basically, like, each font would contain a list of OpenType features and a list of Unicode points. And then I would calculate the language support, for example, on the app side. Like, I wouldn't rely on a publisher to calculate that consistently and also with ever evolving language definitions, but I would do that on the app side based on the Unicodes that are supplied.
Wow, ambitious. I guess that kind of ties in. Another question was, will it add a shopping or rental feature? But I guess if you can't preview it, then that's probably a no at this point.
Yeah, this is one of the most common questions. Newcomers to the project have their trouble understanding why I don't want to sell fonts. Yeah, well, I really don't, because this is a font installer. But I will say that I have an idea for a future project called Fair Fonts, which is a platform dedicated to selling fonts that are not selling, actually, sorry, to linking to publishers who are selling their own fonts. So it carries the fair trade concept already in its name. And I'm dreaming of like a mobile app where you can browse new font editions published by independent font publishers on your way to work in the subway, and you can share like the Pantone app. They have an app, and like you can browse colors, and then you can share a color with your colleague that you just discovered in the subway. And basically that's what I want to do. So it'll be a website and an app. But when I say it will be, like, this is all in dream space. Like these are ideas. I have the Twitter handle and the Instagram handle and the website, and that's it for now.
Now you just need funding. So other than crowdsourcing on the Patreon, who's funding? How do you get funding for the project?
Yes, so I get funded by Google Funds. I developed Type.World in as part of my work for Google Fonts. I'm doing other font onboarding work for Google Fonts as well, and I'm working on this. And then the Patreon funding covers a few of it's not much that's coming in. It covers a bit of code signing certificates and server costs and these things, which is great. I'm absolutely thankful for that. Keep them coming, those donations. But and then obviously, since it's going to become a commercial project, I'm hoping to stand on my own feet. And not only that, but also I would like to employ maybe a developer as soon as possible, because you may not have noticed, but none of this is actually like my field of work. I've never done any such a thing before, so that's why it's also taking too long.
But I'm glad you're doing it. I'm not sure if the tech team will cut us off, but I'll keep asking questions till they do. Let's see. What did you use to create two versions of the app, one for Mac, one for Windows? Like, yes. What programming language?
Yeah, it's all Python. The framework that lies under it is called WX. It's a user interface framework that's cross-platform also with Linux. But other than that, it's really just an HTML app. It's because web development, HTML was like the easiest choice for me to not have to relearn how to create user interfaces in apps on the computer, but I'm just rendering a website basically, and that's interacting with an underlying Python layer. So it's all Python because that's what I know and love. And it's portable because I also have a Linux, like a user interface version of the app in mind for the future. But it comes with its own set of problems, because WX, or maybe the Python approach in general, there's all these dependencies of the modules that I'm using, and it creates a ginormous app download. When it's compressed, it's like 50 megabytes or so. That's already kind of outrageous. But when it's decompressed, it's, I don't know, 200 megabytes, and it's just out of this world. And I'm almost sure that if I recreated the same app in Xcode using only Apple's own frameworks, then it would be like, I don't know, 2 megabytes. I have no idea. Probably not, but you get the point. So I could see in the future a complete rewrite of the user interface app, for example, in a Windows-specific framework, or in Mac, and so on. But for now, that's what it is: cross-platform Python approach.
Beautiful. And then I think we'll do one more question here, which someone was asking about like if someone updates a font and it creates backwards compatibility issues, like what happens? They get a notification. They have to press like to accept the update, correct?
Oh, now I understand the question because I already read it in the chat. Yes, a very important question. I hope we got it right. So the user only gets notified of an incoming font update and then has to install the font updates manually because of compatibility issues, or let's say page rendering or line breaking issues, etc. There's no plan currently for a completely automated font update. I would like I would like the user to keep this part of like agency over their work. Surely it could be implemented in a completely automatic thing, but it would only be after several security warnings and checkboxes, and I don't know. Like, no, there's no plan.
Okay, that's great. I guess we had one more question rolling that's very important. Can someone still send you a one-time payment via the Coffeesats site?
Yeah, I think so. I think every other month I receive like a €5 donation.
Great. Okay, yeah. Send him money any way you can just to see this in your world. It's a fantastic project. Thank you so much, Yanone. We really appreciate all the work you put into this. Thank you.
Thank you all for watching and for ATypI for hosting us.
All right, great. All right, thanks everyone. And I guess that's the end.
Bye.